On November 10th, 2017, a project called the Medieval Blacksmith was added to LEGO Ideas. Its creator was a 17-year-old boy from Hanover, Germany with a passion for smithing. A little under 2 years later, his project would finally gain 10,000 followers before being chosen by LEGO as one of their upcoming Ideas projects in early 2020, beating sets like The Office, The Seven Dwarfs House or JK Brickworks' Pursuit of Flight. Today, I want to look at the set about 1.5 years after its release to see if it still holds up and if it really deserves the reputation as one of the best medieval sets ever. First, we'll have to look at the context the set released in. Even though Castle is one of the oldest and most beloved LEGO themes, the line ended in 2014. Many fans missed the smaller sub-themes like Kingdom, Ninjas and Knight's Kingdom. So when the set released, a lot of people felt nostalgic, not just because this was our first castle-like set in 8 years, but also because it brought back the iconic Black Falcon Knights. The last time these guys were seen was in 2002, and seeing these figures delighted a lot of older LEGO fans. But even ignoring the nostalgia factor, these figures are great, using gunmetal grey for the chainmail armor with a strong blue for the fabric pieces covering it. I personally am a huge fan of all gunmetal grey minifigs, so I'm very happy having these figures, and using shoulder armor pieces to make the figures look wider was a very good decision in my opinion, since I think they look way too skinny for knights otherwise. There was also a bit of controversy when the set released, since one of the knights in the set is a woman, which of course isn't historically accurate, but honestly I like seeing some diversity. I think this can also be explained / excused by the fact that LEGO doesn't classify the set as medieval on their website, but rather fantasy, and I much prefer that honestly. I know tommycbricks brought up a similar point in his review of the set, where he mentions that he isn't the biggest medieval fan but loves The Legend of Zelda. While I'm a fan of knights and all that medieval stuff, I'm also a huge fan of Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, and you can't tell me you watched that show and didn't think Brienne of Tarth was at least somewhat badass. So I don't mind being a little historically inaccurate here, but if you really can't stand looking at the faces, you can swap their hair pieces for helmets and have them be in battle mode, if that's what you want to call it. These figures look absolutely great in my opinion, and I'm happy that they're in League Creator 3-in-1 castle as well as in a Lion Knights castle, so I'll be able to build a small army when I get those sets. Now knights can't just travel by foot, so LEGO gave us a little carriage with a horse for our figures to sit on. I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little disappointed by this thing, but I'll attribute that to the fact that I was expecting something more in the realm of Gandalf's carriage from Gandalf Arrives. Now we consider 2 knights down in front of the carriage for them to travel to the blacksmith, which we'll be looking at next. First things first, I just want to say that this set is quite a bit bigger than I thought. Just to give you an idea of the size, here's the 2019 ATST as a comparison. Even though I was surprised by how tall it is, in retrospect it does seem obvious that a 2100 piece build would be quite big. And yes, you heard that right, 2100 pieces. That's quite a lot. Of course there are many sets beating that by almost 5 times, but still. Also taking the original price of $150 into consideration, no one should be able to deny that this set is a great deal. Sure, part of this can be attributed to it being part of the Ideas line, and all those sets have amazing value, but even in that regard it beats out other sets like the Stratocaster or Pirates of Barracuda Bay. Looking past just the model size though, I have to point out the building techniques that were used here to make this building feel old and somewhat historically grounded. I mentioned that this set is a fantasy set, but even those stories have their real world equivalents, and LEGO managed to capture the style of a medieval building really well here. If you look at 13th, 14th century buildings, you will realize that unlike most of our modern buildings, which are very symmetrical and structured, those houses were a lot more dependent on extra pillars and just in general more asymmetrical. Just to give you an idea without straight up ripping pictures from the internet, here's a video I took of a few houses from my city. Even though most of them were renewed / restored not too long ago, the structure and architecture are the same as the original ones destroyed in World War II. And this model really captures that ragtag feeling of the house not being able to hold itself up without the extra support. It also helps make the build feel more alive and less monotone. A big part in this plays the variation on the walls and roof as well, with different colors and textures, which makes it feel more used and not just like a piece in a museum. As a comparison, I get down the Lockwood Estate from 2018, and here you can really see what I mean with feeling more alive. While the Lockwood Estate is 100% symmetrical and doesn't have any real variation in color or texture, the blacksmith feels like a house out in the woods that people actually live in. The house itself is divided into 3 areas, those being the actual blacksmith, the kitchen and the living area. They're easy separable, although I find problems in assembling them again since its ragtag nature makes it hard to align walls as such. The forging area occupies the first floor, featuring a light brick to illuminate the fire pit to put the sword in before cooling it off in water. On the inside you'll be able to find a bunch of details such as more armor pieces, copious amounts of coal, as well as an anvil in the middle of the room. Other interesting things on the ground floor include an entirely brick-built tree, a small garden and a rotting well. The second floor is centered around a kitchen / dining / living room area, featuring things like a dining table, a place to cook and a butter churner. Something I always have a problem with when it comes to LEGO interiors is that they always feel way too cramped for my liking. Oftentimes figures take take up way too much space and just block pathways completely, but I think they did a really good job with this interior. There's real space for minifigures, and putting in a single one doesn't fill up the whole room immediately. They've also managed to include some great building techniques into this room. If we take off one of the chairs for example, you can see that they don't use the conventional way of building a chair, but rather came up with new ways, like using these axes as a part of the back. And I want to mention that I appreciate them actually including stairs to get from one story to another. They just leave that out so often that it immediately caught my eye. On the outside, the same tethered look that I talked about earlier continues, interlaced with some wooden beams, which still give it that somewhat symmetrical feeling. I gotta say that it was a much more satisfying experience building this level than the first. Well, on the first one you were building up everything from the foundation. This one mostly followed the concept of building everything up one by one, so you were always seeing what you were building, which just gives it a better experience, honestly. The top floor is home to this set's minifigures, and now that I mentioned them so often without actually having shown them to you, I'll just quickly cover them. The blacksmith looks great with his ponytail beard combo and his smithing apron. He feels like a classic blacksmith you'd see in some fantasy world rather than a in real life grounded one, but in that way he fits the set's aesthetic a lot better. His, what I can only assume to be wife, looks good as well, featuring a hunter-like outfit with dual molded legs and a simple green vest. Overall they fit the build quite well, even though I would have wished the woman to look a bit more blacksmith-like. Getting back to the top floor now though, it's quite easy to take off the roof, although you can only take off one side, the other side is locked in place by the chimney and window. The roof is only slat in, so you can easily pull it off and get a good look inside. Ignoring all the great building techniques they used to build the bearskin on the floor or the bed in the corner, they did a great job with the architecture of this room. Having the room be split in two is a great way to bring forward the most important parts of it, also leaning into the medieval feeling of houses needing support beams to hold themselves up, but things like the little extra outgrowth on the side containing a writing area or the window on only one side help make this feel fantastic in a way as well. The only thing really distracting from all of this is the roof's color in my opinion. Having a blue roof kinda throws off this whole build's color palette. While this is a personal thing and can easily be excused with it being a fantasy set, I would love to see some mock-up featuring a more neutral color. Now, after assembling the whole house again, I want to give an answer to the question I posed in the beginning of the video. Does this set hold up even 1.5 years after its release, and does it deserve the reputation as one of the best medieval sets of all time? To answer both of those questions in a single word, yes. This set holds up as one of the, in my opinion, 2 best medieval sets, sharing its place with the Lion Knight's castle. I think in regard to attention to detail, it exceeds even that, but that is one of the benefits of it being an idea set. Now, this set won't be on the market for much longer, probably half a year at most, so if you really like fantasy or medieval stuff and have some money to spare, pick this set up. It's one of the best idea sets as well, and in my ranking of the 2021 LEGO sets, it placed in the top 10 as well. All around, you can see I love this set and would recommend this to any LEGO fan. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. If you want to see more of me, check out all my other socials, which are linked in the description, as well as my shorts channel on which I upload every other day. And until next week, goodbye.